We mentioned yesterday, and sorry for being unprepared for class. Browns were going to have some issues at the wide receiver position. I did unfortunately omit a name from the practice squad yesterday that has been brought up. We're going to get to all of that and the corresponding moves, of course, and also the rumor out is that the Browns are officially going to make a change at the quarterback position. According to one source, not normally one of our sources we go to for Cleveland Browns coverage. But we're going to get into all that. And also, the AFC North is now officially wide open. Is there anything the Cleveland Browns can do about it? Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate each and every one of you that come on out to the OBR every day for the best Cleveland Browns written content. We're at theobr.com. Make sure you look into the VIP access, the insider forums. Ask the insiders. Your subscription gets bundled with a subscription to Paramount Plus. Two great things for the price of one. And for everyone, your continued support for the OBR streaming network beginning nightly at 6 o'clock with Browns 3D. You will have Pete and Joe later this evening, so stick around for that as well. And then tomorrow, of course, Browns 3D in a jammed pack lineup. Um, with I guess it's out there. So Cam Justice, of course, is going to be joining Fred and Michael Keefe, and then, of course, Garage Beers after that. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube, and, of course, make sure you are subscribed to the OBR on Twitch. So as far as the Dillon Gabriel news, this is where we are at for right now. According, and let's just make sure we get all of this correctly. We don't want to mess anybody up here or disregard anybody. According to Matt Zenitz is with CBSSports.com covering the NFL and college football. Matt Zenitz is reporting that the plan is to go to Dillon Gabriel for the Cleveland Browns this week in London against the Minnesota Vikings. If you watched yesterday's episode, I pretty much said I felt this was the way to go. No disrespect to Joe Flacco. I just think it was time, and the belief should have been that the kid, if he can be anything for this team, there's no reason to believe he needed any more time. And this offense certainly needs a spark. This offense is very young when you consider Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, of course, now a second-year wide receiver brought up in Malachi Corley, Gage Larvadain, a rookie wide receiver in Isaiah Bond, a rookie wide receiver in Harold Fenton Jr. For me, why not just go young? Just have the kids go and work together. Either something comes of it, something doesn't come of it, but either way, a whole bunch of guys gain a ton of valuable NFL experience working together. The Minnesota Vikings are extremely banged up right now. Their Brian O'Neill will not play. Andrew Van Ginkel will not play. JJ McCarthy will not play. Two other of their offensive linemen are dinged up right now. The Vikings are a hurting unit, and the Browns simply have an opportunity here to take advantage of it. There's just no way around it. Wounded dog. Go get it done. Some roster moves before we kind of get going a little bit more into this. Of course, Cleveland Browns, we know yesterday put DeAndre Carter on injured reserve, which meant a wide receiver was coming up from the practice squad. The Cleveland Browns also today put a second wide receiver on injured reserve. That receiver was Cedric Tillman. Now, I believe the Browns still would have an open roster spot, but that is probably going to mean that they are going to sign a corner from the practice squad, which we'll get to in 1 second. But Gage Larvadain and Malachi Corley have both been brought up to the 53-man roster. The case for Larvadain is probably going to be returnability. Um, the Browns can have Jerome Ford return kicks, and it's not something he's really been that bad at. He's actually been pretty decent at a limited time for the Browns. You certainly could have Gage Larvadain do that, but it is more probably of the punt returner role. We saw against the Baltimore Ravens, DeAndre Carter again was hurt on the first play of the game. From that point, the Browns had to put Isaiah Bond at the punt returner position. And as we saw for Isaiah Bond, it's just not something he's good at. And when you went through, everywhere Isaiah Bond has been, whether it was college, whether it was high school, it was just nothing he was ever really asked to do. He's obviously had opportunities, and catching punts is not easy. Anybody who's ever played any football in any capacity and been at a practice and tried to catch punts, it's easy. It's pretty difficult. And some guy, it's one of those things you can either do or you can't do. And for Isaiah Bond, that's not the case. And even still, I'm okay with it because I think Isaiah Bond certainly has his wide receiver role growing. It probably will grow even more now without Cedric Tillman. And, the last thing you want to do is have so much on his plate. Remember, he got to a late start, not getting here till late August. So just, let Bond continue to develop. And for now, he's probably the starting wide receiver. And if things go well for Isaiah Bond, he might not give up that starting wide receiver position for a while. Larvadain, like I said, going to come up probably for the returnability, and that's fine. And we know, and if the switch is going to Dillon Gabriel, obviously Gage Larvadain was a big, big part of the summer for all the quarterbacks. He was involved with a lot of reps with all of them. So certainly could be a sneaky play as maybe getting a little run as a wide receiver on Sunday. But one of the guys that was put on the practice squad, the initial practice squad, that nothing's really ever been talked about since. And look, when practices go into regular season mode, of course, the press is limited what they're allowed to see. The press is even more limited about what they are allowed to report what they have seen. So we haven't really gotten much word on what's been going on with Malachi Corley in the 4 weeks that he's been in Cleveland and a member of the practice squad. But what we can tell you is that in 2024, Malachi Corley was a third-round selection of the New York Jets. Why he is no longer a New York Jet, obviously, a lot of that has to do with Malachi Corley himself, not necessarily the Jets. You look at the Jets and think, well, there's a bad team. What's going on here? Why didn't a guy like Malachi Corley stick? From anyone you hear and what's been leaked out to the media, a lot of that was Malachi Corley. And unfortunately, Malachi Corley probably was, immature at times with the New York Jets, and it certainly cost him. But now he's in a situation, and when he got here, and even when he first got here, you thought, this is a guy that can make a rapid climb from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. There was nobody there outside of Jerry Jeudy that necessarily had that much more of a repertoire than Malachi Corley. And his college statistics speak for themselves. It is 250 career receptions. It is over 260, over 3,000 yards receiving, and of course, 29 touchdowns in his time in Western Kentucky. Now, I'm more than happy to maybe give this opportunity. And Malachi Corley, you put into this receiver room, and again, a lot of youth, obviously, in this room. You have rookie wide receiver Isaiah Bond. You now have 2 second-year receivers, 2 second-year receivers, of course, with Malachi Corley and with Jamari Thrash. Malachi Corley is currently only 23 years old still. And here's, a player where, it certainly did not go well for him in the beginning in his time with the New York Jets. And it was never really a question of talent. It was a question of commitment. And hopefully for a month now, he's shown the Browns, on the practice squad that, maybe he is growing up and starting to take things a tad bit more seriously. Certainly a great opportunity. And the Browns certainly could use some protection out of the wide receiver position, a group that was suffering, no doubt, before the injury to Cedric Tillman. And now here you are again, even in a deeper hole with Cedric Tillman now currently injured. The most interesting of the moves made today by the Cleveland Browns 100% has to be that they signed a cornerback to the practice squad, Amir Speed, 2023 draft, 6th round, 6'3.5", 4.3, 4.40, has a good 3 cone time, never really stuck in the NFL. He's played parts of 15 career NFL games. But that type of size and speed combination is what you were looking for in a guy who is going to be either a practice squad player or one of the remaining spots on a 53-man roster. Here's the interesting part. Cameron Mitchell, after a disastrous week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens and being inactive in week 3 and week 4 for the Cleveland Browns, the Browns released Cam Mitchell today. Interesting. And I kind of called it Saturday when you were bringing up corners from the practice squad to play, which meant the only reps that Cam Mitchell was probably going to see were going to be special teams. And now those were being taken away from him as well. And I think the Browns have just seen enough from Cameron Mitchell to know that they have seen too much, and obviously not in a good way. So Cameron Mitchell, his time with the Cleveland Browns, who knows, maybe a day or two back on the practice squad. But the way it works is DeAndre Carter on IR, Cedric Tillman on IR, Malachi Corley up from the practice squad, Gage Larvadain up from the practice squad, Cameron Mitchell out, Amir Speed, new corner, brought in to the practice squad for the Cleveland Browns. At the time of this recording, no other outlet is necessarily running with this Dillon Gabriel storyline. I really believe this was something we were going to hear tomorrow, basically as, the Browns were kind of closing the door on the plane. Oh, yeah, Dillon Gabriel starting. Plane door drops. Obviously, the Browns are, off the radar for whatever their flight would be from Cleveland to London, 6-7 hours. I honestly don't know. So if true, this is, in my opinion, it's just the way to go. Look, Dillon Gabriel, and I said yesterday, and I certainly said over the weekend, I certainly said Sunday night, there's nothing more the Browns could do for Dillon Gabriel. Honestly, if you felt he had command of enough of the playbook, then it was certainly more than okay to give him the opportunity. He's going to be 25. He started 63 collegiate games. He can either play in the NFL and overcome the physical limitations he has, or he can't. No more learning, no more practice reps, and God knows he's probably not getting very many practice reps as it is. I just felt if Dillon Gabriel is as intelligent as the Cleveland Browns have told us he is, if he processes as quickly as the Cleveland Browns continue to rave that he is, all of these things the Cleveland Browns told us themselves. So if that was the case, it made no sense to not go ahead and give Dillon Gabriel the opportunity. The pace Joe Flacco was playing at was just too slow. I'm sorry. And with all of these young pieces on offense that are coming from college football, where the pace is extremely fast, everybody's trying to get off a lot of plays. What would have been the reasoning to not go ahead and run with the college quarterback? The former college quarterback from the University of Oregon, the University of Oklahoma, and the University of Central Florida. And now CBS Sports main page is running with the story as well that Dillon Gabriel is going to start. So again, by the time of this recording to where it airs, we'll probably most likely have an official one way or the other. I'm for it. I'm excited. I think it was time for a breath of fresh air. And you have to all remember, of course, it will be Sunday breakfast and Browns football this week, of course, when the Browns host the Vikings in London. I'm sure as you all have seen by now, Baltimore Ravens are in a serious amount of injury trouble. Fantastic interior defensive tackle Matt Beakway is out for the year with a neck injury, and keeping it real, as much as we are all so nervous about Jeremiah Uso-Koromoa, you certainly would have the same type of nerves and feel for Ravens fans, and certainly Matt Beakway himself. It's very, very serious injury, of course. And, it's something where it's, look, ACLs are difficult, Achilles are difficult, but players certainly can overcome those things. And most likely when their playing career is done, does not affect them long term. When you're talking about neck, of course, that is certainly something that can have, and even if it's a surgery, I mean, those things can be difficult and certainly can be career altering and certainly could, be general life well being altering. So, certainly from Adebikwe and the Ravens family, if any fan base kind of understands, it is certainly the Cleveland Browns that understand that situation. Roquan Smith out a couple of weeks as well. Nate Wiggins left Sunday. Marlon Humphrey left Sunday. Roquan Smith is one we know on. It's going to be a couple of weeks. Hamstring as well for Roquan Smith. And I'll be honest, even though he was dry humping the living hell out of anybody with a Cleveland Brown jersey on who had the ball in week 2, Roquan Smith did not look in very good health. I'm sorry, very good shape, I should say. Definitely was more of a belly than I have ever seen on Roquan Smith at any time I've seen him going all the way back to Georgia. So unfortunately for the Ravens, that's another big blow, is losing Roquan Smith. The early word is that Lamar Jackson is at least out for Sunday in the Baltimore Ravens game against the Houston Texans. Houston Texans come into this game 1-3, just like the Baltimore Ravens come into this game at 1-3. All of a sudden, for the Houston Texans, this 1-3 matchup, it looks a little bit easier on paper than it initially certainly would have. A trip to Baltimore is never easy. The Ravens are usually loaded, but all of a sudden, now the Ravens are without key pieces, question. But with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a bye week, currently sitting at 3-1, the Cincinnati Bengals at 2-2, and let's be honest, that 2 and whatever for the Cincinnati Bengals, that could be something we say for a really, really long time, for the rest of this year, for the next few months at least. This team, and I think that's the thing with Jake Browning. It's the thing with a lot of backup quarterbacks. Every now and then they go in, they get a hot streak going, and they look pretty good, and pull out a ball game. And then all of a sudden you go through the whole week with him, and then you get out there for the next game, and it's, oh, yeah, that's why he's a backup quarterback in this league. And it's certainly, I think, what Jake Browning is going through right now. The Cincinnati Bengals defense is certainly not doing them any favors whatsoever. But, of course, these are things you have to deal with when you are not getting the optimal offensive performance that this Cincinnati Bengals team normally gets when the offense is led by Joe Burrow. 125 yards to the air last night. That's it for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, you take in mind, of course, the Denver Broncos have an extremely tough defense. But 125 yards in a game where the Cincinnati Bengals got smoked. So they couldn't even pick up like the cheap gimme yards late in the game. Just we're not having it. So some of this, of course, a lot of it you can put on Cincinnati, but you certainly could give some credit to the Denver Broncos defense as well. So you have the 3-1 Steelers, the 2-2 Bengals, the 1-3 Ravens, and of course the 1-3 Cleveland Browns. And there's now an opportunity for the Browns to make a little noise here. Pittsburgh's 3-1. The Browns are 1-3. The Browns are going to face a beat-up Minnesota Vikings team on Sunday. Have an opportunity to get to 2-3. Then you go to Pittsburgh the following week. Find a way around that. You're sitting at 3-3, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are sitting there at 3-2, and the Browns would have at the point a tiebreaker. So the AFC North is now wide open. And it's funny how this works, right? In years 23, 20, where the Cleveland Browns had really, really good football teams and certainly went to the playoffs as a wild card team in both 20 and 23. That wasn't the year an opportunity could open atop the AFC North. Neither of those years. But here in 2025, where the Browns, if you could just not look at the quarterback room in any way whatsoever, and you ignore the fact that the offensive line is old and tired, it's not a bad looking roster. But now, when this division is open, your quarterback play is shaky as hell. So much so that you are now going to go to a rookie, and everybody thought it was going to be, look, we're going to get through these 6 games, and then they'll evaluate where they're at. And, well, sometimes saying, putting a benchmark on something, it's a great idea. It certainly is. But some things have to, be able to affect that. And the fact that, Joe does not have much mobility whatsoever. And look, we can blame the offensive line all we want. Yeah, and look, they have not been fantastic. I'm not going to lie. I'm not blind. I'm watching these games just like you guys are. But every now and then, you need a quarterback to get away from the pass rush. And Joe cannot do that in any way whatsoever. If he was not committing a large amount of turnovers, I would, again, be okay with keeping Joe Flacco in there. Well, what if Gabriel commits a lot of turnovers? Well, he's a rookie in his first NFL start. The expectation would be that he most likely would commit a turnover or two. That's the expected. What Joe was supposed to give us is far below what the expectation is. So anything Dillon Gabriel gives you as far as positives, or even if you win the game, it's gravy. You take it. House money, baby. So, looking at the North, and I think a lot more people, and it always happens with the Bengals, a lot more people get excited about the Cincinnati Bengals because you say Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. And I can't argue with you. I can't argue with any way whatsoever. Potential to put up 30 points with those guys at the top of that offense is legit. It certainly is. But now, without Joe Burrow to lead the offense and essentially be, the maestro of the symphony, everything else just looked worse. So now you got two receivers who are making a bajillion dollars, and there's nobody to get them the ball. And I think Jamar Chase is doing the best that he can to bite his tongue through this situation. And you got to remember, for Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, it goes a lot deeper than Cincinnati. These guys have obviously had a ridiculous playing relationship going all the way back to LSU. So it's really, if you're talking about, this is really the only quarterback Jamar Chase has played with outside high school. So his relationship with Joe Burrow runs deep, deep. And yes, if there was another quarterback out there who was capable of getting him the ball, I think Jamar Chase would do his best to kind of stay quiet. But also, Jamar Chase is a guy that feels like, well, if Joe Burrow's not here, you better throw it to me 30 times a game because you need me as much as possible. It's kind of the mentality you appreciate. It's the kind of mentality you want. Of course, when it doesn't work, kind of leads to some of the issues that you're seeing right now, obviously, with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Steelers, it's a soft one. It's a soft 3-1. I mean, nothing really wows me about this team. I think the defense is okay. I don't think it's great. The offense, and just as I had the same concerns, of course, with Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns, is what is legitimacy of this man playing 18 weeks? You certainly have to have and feel that with Aaron Rodgers, even though he's off certainly to a hot start right now. And, do they have enough of a running game to, offset if things start to get slow, which I don't think they do. But this opportunity sits there for the Browns. And, it sucks that this team is probably not as good as we were going to hope they would be. You're hoping there's an opportunity they go out there and seize this moment. And I just don't think it's possible. Unless the Southpaw can come in and be a difference. Can Dillon Gabriel make a difference? And I know there's many of you who are, after the show I did yesterday, saying, well, he better make a difference. It was never essentially that I am saying Dillon Gabriel is going to make a difference. But I have said, and I've said since Sunday night, that Dillon Gabriel can give you everything that Joe Flacco has given you to this point, and probably more. I stand by that. Browns still could lose by 7 or 10. And if they were going to lose by 7 or 10 with Joe Flacco, or they lose by 7 or 10 points with Dillon Gabriel, then Dillon Gabriel should have been the guy behind center. And again, there are so much youth on this Cleveland Browns offense that these guys I don't care about Isaiah Bond and Joe Flacco developing a relationship. I really don't care about Harold Fannin and Joe Flacco developing a relationship. It's never going to turn into anything. It's never going to be long term. So, yes, I would rather these guys work on their working relationship with Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. You gave Joe a month. And what Joe showed you in a month was not enough to win a ball game on his own. I can't even find a way to factor him in to contribute anything from the Green Bay Packers win to, I'm sorry, just trying to go through here for you. I can't find any way to attribute anything from the win over the Packers to Joe Flacco. It was a big run. Of course, it was two big runs from Quinshon Judkins. Walk-off field goal for Schmidt. Blocked field goal for the special teams. So even in the W, you really couldn't find anything where you could say it was Joe. And again, it's no disrespect to Joe. And bringing him in was a smart idea. I don't think anybody knew truly what the 40-year-old was going to bring to the table or the ability of what Joe Flacco could bring to the table. And I think that's why the Browns were, I don't want to say soft with him, but soft with him as far as giving him an easy summer, trying to have him, kind of maybe ramp up and give everything he had at age 40. And unfortunately, it's just not enough. And you have Dillon Gabriel, whose brains and talent may outweigh his size and God-given ability. Now, for me, this is kind of where I was at with this season. For the first time in 3 years, the Cleveland Browns had a, full and deep draft class, aided by a late summer signing of Isaiah Bond, which even just boosted the depth to this. Some guys brought in along the way, Malachi, Corley, who we'll see. But, we're talking about a guy that was, top 96 selection a year and a half ago. It's about the youth, and it's about, hopefully, the youth growing together. Does it turn into a chance that they can make some noise in the AFC North, even with it being a down year? And if you remember, a couple of years ago, we were talking about this division is, could put everybody in the playoffs. That's how good, that's how deep, that's how competitive the AFC North was. Obviously, we're a long way from Kansas, Toto. But who knows? Maybe with the vision that this division could be up for grabs. And, if they battle and they play hard, maybe all of a sudden, even sitting here at 1-3 right now, get a chance to go on a little run, maybe make a little noise. Either way, I want to watch the kids. If they become something quicker than they should, fantastic. If they show signs that they're developing, but the team is not having a bunch of success, it's kind of understandable. That's why this was going to be a 2-year rebuild kind of on the fly. So for now, the belief is for Matt Zenitz of CBS Sports, Dillon Gabriel will be your starter on Sunday. Tillman Carter to injured reserve. Malachi Corley, Gage Larvadain up from the injured reserve. Amir Speed onto the practice squad at the cornerback position. And unfortunately for Cameron Mitchell, His days as a Cleveland Brown are done. Appreciate everybody who supports the OBR. The written content, which is just fantastic, from my crew and my friends over here at theobr.com. Make sure you digest it daily. Make sure you look into the VIP access, insider forums, ask the insiders, and of course, your subscription gets bundled with Paramount Plus. For all of you that support us here at the OBR streaming network, we could not be more thankful. Beginning every night with Browns 3D at 6 o'clock. Tuesday, Pete and Joe after. So make sure you stick around for that as well. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on Twitch. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we'll talk to you all tomorrow.